For those of you who don't know, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I was born into it, and I was raised as a witness all the way until I was 18. When I turned 18, I chose to disassociate myself from the religion. I left the religion because to me it wasn't real. A lot of the things that they said did not quite make sense.
Setiap minggu, kami berkumpul di Balai Kerajaan untuk belajar tentang Allah dan firman-Nya Alkitab. Acara itu terbuka untuk umum dan gratis. Jadi, silakan datang.
Tahukah Anda apa yang berlangsung di Balai Kerajaan Saksi-Saksi Yehuwa? Tersedia program pelajaran Alkitab dan khotbah setiap minggu.
Pertama kali saya datang, saya senang sekali. Suasananya nyaman. Saya belum pernah lihat yang seperti itu.
Orang-orangnya ramah-ramah, semuanya tertib, dan mereka peduli sama orang lain.
Di kebaktian Saksi-Saksi Yehuwa 2019, Anda akan belajar apa itu kasih sejati, di mana itu bisa ditemukan, dan cara untuk saling menunjukkan kasih.
For those of you who don't know, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I was born into it, and I was raised as a witness all the way until I was 18. When I turned 18, I chose to disassociate myself from the religion. As a result from that, I disassociated myself from my family as well. So for those of you who don't know what disassociate means, or just fellowshipping, period, or really the heaviness of leaving the religion, I'm going to kind of break it down for you guys a little bit and kind of give you my viewpoint. So, as a Jehovah's Witness, when you're in the religion, once you become baptized, that's when you are choosing to give your life over to Jehovah God. It's something that you're only able to do once you're old enough to make a conscious decision. A lot of religions, they baptize their children as soon as they're born as babies, but in the Jehovah's Witness religion, it's a little different. You have to actually go through a process. You have to, there's about 100 or so questions that you have to sit down around a table of elders. You discuss it, you have to answer the questions properly, show that you really have the knowledge and that you really want to do this. Now, when I was 16 years old, I chose to make the dunk. I went under the water, and really I did it for my parents. You know, there's a lot of pressure on children to do this in the religion. A lot of the children choose to get baptized when they're young. Some children I know get baptized as early as 9 years old. Now, when they're doing this, and even when you're 16 years old, they don't quite realize the severity of that decision. That simple dunk under the water will change your entire life. Because of that dunk under the water, I lost my mother, my sister, my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, cousins, everybody. If you're familiar with the Amish religion, it's very familiar. Once you leave the religion, you get shunned. That means nobody's allowed to speak with you. No one's allowed to really even be in your presence or associate with you at all. Even Jehovah's Witnesses who I work with to this day, if I walk in, they look the other way. They don't speak to me or anything. Any person of the religion, that's kind of how it is. And I left the religion because to me it wasn't real. A lot of the things that they said did not quite make sense. The sad part about this and the way that it affects a lot of families and children, when you're in the religion, you're only allowed to associate with other Jehovah's Witnesses. Even in school age, you're not allowed to have friends with any person who's not a witness. That means no one can come over to your house. You can't talk on the phone to them. You can't go anywhere with them. You're only allowed to speak to them and see them when you're forced to during school hours. So the only people you're allowed to be friends with are Jehovah's Witness. Now it's kind of a setup because then you'll end up in my situation now. Once you choose to leave the religion, you'll be left with no one to talk to. And this is really sad because a lot of the Jehovah's Witnesses, they get caught up in the trap this way. And this is kind of how they keep you. It's very cult-like. You know, when I was growing up, everyone used to tell me, you're in a cult. And I never understood it. You know, I used to actually be offended. I used to be, thinking to myself, well, how is this a cult? How is that? And I understand now because you're only allowed to speak to witnesses. Only. They're the only ones in your life, period. And then once you leave that religion, you're left with no one. And a lot of people have to go through this. It's heartbreaking. It's very lonely. It's very hard. You have to be a very strong person to go through this. You feel like you're left out in the world with no one. Your own mother. My mother, I'm 26 years old now. I left when I was 18. I've only seen her about 2 or 3 times. And 2 of those times was when I was in labor with her grandchild. She came to the hospital to view her grandchildren, and that's it. This forces a lot of people to go back to the religion because they simply can't handle the stress of being alone and the sadness and loneliness of not having anyone to turn to. And that forces you to come back. And it is very cult-like.
Hello, Jessica. I am 93 years old. I will be 94 in January, and my eyesight is going bad. I'd love to see you before I lose my eyesight. Remember, you're the granddaughter that I took care of ever since you was born. And I love you. I still love you. And I would love to see you. Would you please call me or come by to see me? I'd love to see you, but I don't know what else to do. I've called you, and you hung up on me, and that wasn't very nice. So if you will come by or call me, I'd love to see you. After all, I took care of you ever since you was born. And other people are very nice to me, except Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wanted to talk to you about the fear of Armageddon. It's one of the central doctrines of Jehovah's Witnesses, and that fear of Armageddon is something that I've lived with all my life. There are pictures, numerous pictures in the literature of fire raining down from the sky and killing people, and one of the other images that they love to use is of earthquakes opening up in the ground and people tumbling down. So as a sensitive child who thought everything through, this affected me deeply. I used to be afraid that my lovely house and garden that I'd grown up with and loved dearly, I was very settled, that when Armageddon came, a gigantic earthquake, a chasm would open up and swallow up our house and garden, used to really upset me. So I'm so glad that I'm free of that fear that I had.
Yet even now, the years of fearing a looming Armageddon are hard to shake.
I have nightmares. I have nightmares where I'm at night and there's this gigantic wave covering all of us and we're all about to die and it's Armageddon. I still have them now.
But speaking from my personal experience, there is a lot of depressed people, a lot of anxious people in the Jehovah's Witness organization. I know that many of the people in my congregation, the congregation I came out of, were suffering from those things. And I believe that it is quite common, which is ironic because Jehovah's Witnesses read over and over again in their publications that Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on earth. It's never supported by any evidence, but it's a claim that's made again and again and again, and I believe is part of the brainwashing or part of the influence that the Watchtower pushes on people, the sense that the only way you can possibly be anything like happy is if you're inside this organization. So for somebody who's already depressed, there is this sense that if you leave, it's only going to be worse. Or if you're anxious, it's only going to be worse. And that's what I want to question in this video. I want to talk a little bit about my own personal experience. I started having questions about Jehovah's Witness doctrine 10 to 12 years ago, and dating back about the same amount of time, I started having panic attacks. And it developed into panic disorder, which is basically where you're living in constant fear of a panic attack. You feel like you could have one at any minute. So I felt like I was at a level 8 in anxiety almost all the time, and it would spike up every once in a while into, or quite frequently at times, into panic attacks. I was on and off medication for years. I had cognitive behavioral therapy. All these things helped. But I don't believe that they got at the root cause. I had the ever-present fear that if I were to disagree, that I would lose everything. Lose my family. Lose my friends. And I believe that that was where this panic was coming from. A feeling of being trapped in a belief system with this consequence held over my head.
Setiap pertemuan terbuka untuk umum, gratis dan tidak ada kolektor.